Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast presented by Saint Church. My name's Caleb, and our hope is to help you study the Word of God every single day. Every day, we're taking time to upload episodes onto Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. We're reading through a chapter of the Bible, we're looking at the context it was written in, and we're seeing what it has to say for us today. Today, we're going to be doing just that by continuing on in our study through the book of Leviticus. We're going to be reading out of Leviticus Chapter 23. Now, really quick and really fast before we dive on into that, if you're checking this out on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and you end up enjoying this episode, take a moment to follow, subscribe, leave a like, consider even leaving a rating and a review. All of those things help make sure that you don't miss out on content and other people will be able to know that it is trustworthy content that is worth checking out. But with that being said, let's just dive right on into Leviticus chapter 23 and let's see what the Word of God has to say today. It says this: The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. There are 6 days when you may work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's festival of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days, present a food offering to the Lord, and on the seventh day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I am going to give you, and you reap its harvest, bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain you harvest. He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord, so it will be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day you wave the sheaf, you must sacrifice as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb a year old without defect, together with its grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil, a food offering presented to the Lord, a pleasing aroma, and its drink offering of a quarter of a hin of wine. You must not eat any bread or roasted or new grain until the very day you bring this offering to your God. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. From the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, count off 7 full weeks. Count off 50 days up to the day after the 7th Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. From wherever you live, bring 2 loaves made of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour, baked with yeast, as a wave offering of first fruits to the Lord. Present with this bread 7 male lambs, each a year old and without defect, 1 young bull and 2 rams. They will be a burnt offering to the Lord, together with their grain offerings and drink offerings, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Then sacrifice 1 male goat for a sin offering and 2 lambs, each a year old, for a fellowship offering. The priest is to wave the 2 lambs before the Lord as a wave offering, together with the bread of the firstfruits. They are a sacred offering to the Lord for the priest. On that same day, you are to proclaim a sacred assembly and do no regular work. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God." The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly, commemorated with trumpet blasts. Do no regular work, but present a food offering to the Lord." The Lord said to Moses, The 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. Do not do any work on that day, because it is the Day of Atonement, when atonement is made for you before the Lord your God. Those who do not deny themselves on that day must be cut off from their people. I will destroy from among you, their people, anyone who does any work on that day. You shall do no work at all. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come wherever you live. It is a day of Sabbath rest for you, and you must deny yourselves. From the evening of the 9th day of the month until the following evening, you are to observe your Sabbath. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Lord's festival of tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days present food offerings to the Lord, and on the 8th day hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is the closing special assembly. Do no regular work. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for bringing food offerings to the Lord, the burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings required for each day. These offerings are in addition to those for the Lord's Sabbaths, and in addition to your gifts and whatever you have vowed, and all the free will offerings you give to the Lord. So beginning with the 15th day of the 7th month, after you have gathered the crop of the land, celebrate the festival to the Lord for 7 days. The first day is a day of Sabbath rest, and the 8th day also is a day of Sabbath rest. On the first day, you are to take branches from luxuriant trees, from palms, willows, and other leafy trees, and rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Celebrate this as a festival to the Lord for 7 days each year. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Celebrate it in the 7th month. Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So Moses announced to the Israelites the appointed festivals of the Lord. And that's the close of Leviticus chapter 23. Now, really quick, today we're looking at these festivals that the Lord outlines for the Israelites to celebrate on a regular basis. We're seeing things from the Sabbath to festivals that go on for weeks on weeks and that sort of a thing. Today, let's just talk about the principle of these things. Now, at the very end of this chapter, we ended up seeing the Lord allude to one of the main reasons for this. That when we look at this, we see that the Lord wants the people of Israel to remember that there was a time in which they were slaves, there was a time in which they were not free, but that God had delivered them, that God saw them in the midst of their need, and he delivered them and brought them to freedom. And so when we look to things like the Sabbath, what's the purpose of the Sabbath? To realize that there was a time that the Israelites, in their enslavement, what did they have to do? They had to always work. They had to always continue to strive to do things for the sake of those who were lording it over them and ruling over them and had enslaved them in the Egyptians. So what's the Lord look and say? You are not enslaved to your work, but rather you will work for 6 days, and you will have an entire day where you are to not do work. When we end up seeing these different festivals, what's the purpose behind them? They are to remind the Israelites that the Lord is their provider, that the Lord cares for them, and that they can slow down to give him honor and worship, but also slow down and be blessed in the midst of it. What do these festivals naturally do? They cause the Israelites to have a rhythm and a routine that is not just based around working hard for every single day and every single moment they possibly could, but rather they end up getting to live lives that are focused around routines and rhythms that honor God. So for you and I today, we may not be celebrating these same types of festivals today, but what do we see that we get to do? We still get to build lives that are not just based around leisure and are based around our own rhythms and routines of relaxation, but rather we get to build our lives in a way that would help us to remember the things that God has done. When we talk about things like going to church on Sundays or regularly gathering weekly with a community, well, what's that allowing us to do? To remember that what Christ has done for us, to remember that we are called into a body of believers, that we are not alone. That's beautiful. Why do we do things like communion regularly? So that we do not forget the work of Christ on the cross and what he's done for us. Why do we celebrate baptisms within church as others are getting to be baptized and that sort of a thing? So that we can remember that we rise in new life with Jesus. Why do we celebrate Christmas or Easter and these different holidays? It's so that we remember the work of Jesus, because God knows there's times we will forget. And so for the Israelites, he baked in and built into their schedule festivals and routines and rhythms that would call them to worship, but also call them to rest and call them to remember who God is. So friend, today I would love to invite you to have rhythms and routines that help you to remember what Jesus has done in your life. But with that being said, that's what I got for you guys today out of Leviticus chapter 23. And so I just want to say thanks for jumping on again. Thanks for being here. If you have any questions, make sure to comment them down below. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, like, follow, leave a rating. Genuinely, all of those things help make sure you don't miss out on any episodes, and they help other people as well know this is worthwhile content. But with that being said, thanks for being here today, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow, because we're taking time to study the Word of God every single day.